Marry your son's bride. The dynasty must continue, and Marianna is young, beautiful, and moreover, a Habsburg, your relative. Advisors urged King Philip IV of Spain. Royal marriages in 17th century Europe were rarely concluded for love. They were tools of diplomacy, a means of consolidating power and preserving dynasties. The marriage of Philip IV to Archduchess Marianna of Austria, a mere 13-year-old girl, was no exception. In 1644, after the death of Philip IV's wife, Isabella of Bourbon, the heir to the throne remained Infante Balthasar Carlos. However, his life was cut short in 1646, when he was just 16 years old. For the king, it was a real shock. The Habsburg lineage's hope and the Spanish crown's future had perished, leaving Philip IV without a male heir. The only remaining child was Infanta Maria Teresa, who was just 8 years old. But Spain needed a king, so the monarch had to seek a new wife. Initially, it was planned that Balthasar Carlos would marry his cousin, Archduchess Marianna of Austria, the daughter of Emperor Ferdinand III of the Holy Roman Empire. However, after his death, the groom's place was taken by his father. Such a scenario was not new. A century earlier, Philip IV's grandfather, Philip II, married his son's fiancée, Princess Anne of Austria, after his son's death. Habsburg dynastic policy dictated strict rules. When Emperor Ferdinand III proposed that Philip IV marry his daughter, he virtually left the king with no choice. Beyond political benefits, this union deepened familial ties between the Austrian and Spanish Habsburgs while simultaneously exacerbating the issue of inbreeding. Marianna's paternal grandfather, Ferdinand II, and her maternal grandmother, Queen Margaret of Austria, wife of Philip III, were siblings. This meant that Marianna's parents, Ferdinand III and Maria Anna of Austria, were first cousins. Such marriages led to severe genetic disorders among descendants, which became increasingly evident with each new generation. The Habsburg Dynasty suffered from hereditary ailments such as physical weakness, cognitive impairments, and infertility. However, the Spanish court ignored the warning signs. At that time, science was not yet seen as a factor capable of explaining the origins of these diseases, and religion and tradition dictated their own rules. The courtiers viewed consanguineous marriages as a means of preserving the purity of the dynasty and keeping power within the hands of the chosen few. The marriage contract was signed on April 2, 1647. Emperor Ferdinand III promised his daughter a dowry of 100,000 gold escudos, while the Spanish king agreed to provide the same amount as a wedding gift, including 50,000 escudos for jewelry. However, both monarchs faced financial difficulties and the wedding had to be postponed. Finally, on February 8, 1648, a delegation set out from Madrid to retrieve the bride. It was a grand entourage, led by the Duke of Najera, and including Cardinal Montalto, the Bishop of Leiria, 32 ladies-in-waiting, pages, stewards, and even bakers. Despite promises, Marianna's dowry was modest. Even her own brother, the future Emperor Leopold I, took part of her wedding gifts for himself. On November 13, 1649, Marianna arrived in Navalcarnero, where the wedding took place. This small town was chosen because, according to Spanish tradition, the city hosting the royal wedding was exempt from taxes. Choosing a poor town ensured that this privilege would not severely impact the state budget. Philip IV, now 44 years old, saw his young bride for the first time. Contemporaries noted her beauty. Fair skin, light hair, and refined manners made her charming. However, she was soon to face a harsh trial, the rigid Spanish court etiquette. A humorous incident occurred when Marianna was given silk stockings as a gift. One of the courtiers threw them into the fire, stating that Spanish queens have no legs. The young queen, taking these words literally, burst into tears, believing she was to undergo an amputation. In 1651, their first daughter, Infanta Margarita, was born, later immortalized in Velázquez's painting Las Meninas. However, subsequent pregnancies ended in tragedy. Several children died shortly after birth. The long-awaited heir, Prince Philip Prospero, was born in 1657 but was frail and died at the age of 3. Finally, in 1661, Charles II was born. His birth was accompanied by excessive religiosity. Relics, including a tooth of St. Peter and a piece of the crown of thorns, were placed around the mother. However, divine favor did not help. The boy was born weak and suffered from numerous physical abnormalities. He had rickets, epilepsy, learning disabilities, and mental disorders. This was a direct result of generations of inbreeding within the Habsburg Dynasty. Philip IV died on September 17, 1665, leaving Marianna as regent for the 4-year-old Charles II. However, her weak rule led to uprisings. The German Jesuit Everard Nithard, her chief advisor, drove the country into economic crisis. He was eventually expelled in 1669, but Spain continued to decline. Charles II, nicknamed the Bewitched due to his illnesses, ruled until 1700 without leaving an heir. His death led to the War of the Spanish Succession, which reshaped the balance of power in Europe, thus ended the era of the Spanish Habsburgs. Inbreeding, dynastic politics, and continuous wars gradually weakened an empire that once controlled half the world. Spain, mired in crises and losses, could no longer claim its former glory. Marianna, having outlived her husband and witnessing the slow decline of her dynasty, lived to the age of 61. She continued to serve as regent even after her son came of age, but her rule was ineffective, leading to growing discontent among the Spanish nobility. In 1696, she passed away, leaving Spain in political and economic ruin. Her son, Charles II, was the last Habsburg to sit on the Spanish throne, and his death in 1700 marked the end of this once great but ultimately doomed dynasty. Thank you for your attention. We hope this story was interesting to you. Share your thoughts in the comments and see you in our next story.